Hi, my name's Matthew, and I've been making games for 20 years. I've just started on the journey creating my own game studio called Starcore. This series follows me setting up my studio and creating our first game. The first two previous episodes of this series have been around setting the foundations, so our vision, mission, and culture statements. A second one, our high-level framework for our business plan. And this, the third episode, the final of our prologue, is about our game. When it comes to making a game, doing the groundwork and setting the prep definitions of certain things really does allow for a lot more creativity to flow after the fact. That's because you've set up the boundaries and limitations of what your game is going to look like. Let's figure it out together. So here we are with the third page of our document. We've got the studio foundations already in episode 1. We've got the business plan from episode 2. And we have here our game development planning page. This is where we're going to define the game idea, start to flesh out the business strategy and identify areas that we need to further explore, identify the team needs, so what skills do we need, and start to put in the frameworks for our development process across common development milestones. So the game development planning. These are the repeatable process for each and every one of your games when preparing to kick them off. Defining these should be part of the initial stages of development. These are living areas of development. So if things change in any areas of the studio or the game project, be sure to reassess and recommit to this game development plan. So this is the high level. This is the reference that you'll be using throughout your game. This is setting the parameters of the creativity to follow. So the way that I like to explain this is creativity is a playground. You can play so many different games. You can make up games with the people around you. But what the game development plan here does is start to inform the team what is in the playground. Are there monkey bars? Is there a slide? Is there a sand pick? Is there a sand pit? Is there a merry-go-round? Is there a stall selling ice cream? So this really helps define the areas of engagement and also the limitations that can be pushed up against in that playground of creativity. So it's a good idea to have these at the start and reassess them at the end of each major milestone to make sure that they are still current, relevant, and helpful. When looking at your game idea, these are the things that you're going to be using to either explain or describe your game, to motivate your team, or to speak to potential partners about what makes your game so special and great. It's equal parts marketing as much as it is a development tool. So I've broken this down into different areas, and we'll look into what those different areas offer and why it's important to have each of them here. So your game idea should have a compelling and unique game concept. That's the foundation. So we should include a short elevator pitch. The term elevator pitch comes from an old term used to describe if you only had a lift, an elevator with somebody who's going to invest in you. What would you say? This is your elevator pitch. What it essentially is a short, pithy way to capture attention and to inspire curiosity. They're the outcomes that you're looking for. So it's typically a couple of sentences to quickly describe your game, and it should be catchy and encourage that curiosity and interest. This is the bait on the hook. This is the getting people to go, okay, tell me more, or, oh, okay, that's not actually of interest to us. We won't spend any more time or energy here, and save everyone that time and energy. So ensuring that it's a couple of sentences, but also using sort of catchy and words that invite questions rather than answer questions necessarily to pique that curiosity is the way to go there. Now, the game brief, that's essentially that longer form of the elevator pitch. You're starting to answer those questions. You're starting to state what key elements are in the game, what it's going to include, and give more of that defining framework of what that is. So this is where you can go into a paragraph or two. It still should be kept succinct, not as short as the elevator pitch, but certainly succinct, direct, and to the point. By the end of experiencing, reading, hearing your elevator pitch and your game brief, I should have an idea, or anyone else who's working on the project or is interested in the project should have a really good idea of what it is that you're doing, what the game is intending to do, and even hint at what sort of gameplay or audience that you're looking to engage with. The core pillars, these are the non-negotiable base elements that should be part of your game. These become the framing for all your game decisions, and it'll be a reference for what you make within the game. So every time you make a choice, a creative choice, a business choice about this game, it should be within the concept and the framework of these core pillars. If you are entertaining an idea that does not fit a core pillar or is in direct contradiction to it, that's okay. The creativity process can introduce new ideas, but the commitment to pursuing that idea, to pursuing that avenue, is one that needs to be done within the frameworks of these core pillars. When creating these core pillars, a statement is a good way to start, or we intend to answer a key question or address a key question and state that key question. They're good ways to kind of highlight and headline those core pillars, and then just give extra explanation to provide the context of those core pillars, what that means, what that it looks like for your game. These are the things that your designers, engineers, artists, everybody involved in the development process should be returning to and going, does this part of it address or build upon these pillars? In the game idea, it's also important to have a defined, unique selling point and a distinct purpose for the game. So USP, unique selling point, is often how that is shortened, USP. So what is your USP, your unique selling point? What sets your game apart from all others? And what are you doing that is special or interesting? So this section is often a lot of iteration, a lot of returning to things. You'll complete one section and then go to the next one and then come back and refine it as your idea becomes more and more crystallized and succinct. So we won't be doing a live exercise for this one in this episode. Instead, let's switch to one that I prepared earlier. So here's where I announce the first game that Starcore will be developing is titled Bullet N. In the not so distant future, you are a news editor for a morning broadcast. You choose not just what stories are shared, but create the headlines, leading to very real consequences. You don't just report the news, you make it. Bullet N is a cyberpunk narrative word puzzle game where the player selects stories to be part of a morning news bulletin and creates headlines from suggested words. The choices of what stories are shared and how they are framed change the world around the player, leading to news stories and real consequences for the player character and others around them. The game is told exclusively through UI screens with limited use of vignettes or backgrounds to set your workspace. It uses a system of conflicting binary concepts to measure world status and to trigger new events. The types of stories and headlines award adds or subtracts to these measures. So authority versus freedom, corporations versus individuals, and those with versus those without. I've already identified 2 potential binaries to add as a post-launch or to have as a stretch goal, but these are going to be the core foundation. The game includes an ending for all of these themes, including a balanced game if they reach the end of all available news stories or survive in the job long enough. There will be opportunities for players to write their own news stories and have them added to the game. Our core pillars. Simple player choices that lead to big in-world consequences. They select 3 stories from the 5 offered and create a headline for each story with a variable keyword selection, as similar to a Mad Lib. Visuals are all screen and UI interaction centered. Customization is color palette based and fonts. And this is to create the distance and dehumanization of the story and the news with the player as the arbiter of that. Another core pillar is we're going to allow for community submissions of news stories and reports chains. A community-built world of stories that is ever growing. We plan to have a simple tool template for setting concept balance tags. We're going to explore the concept of modding, what that could look like, and also explore how user-generated content can lead to chained stories, so you follow the journey as different things happen to those within the story. And the final core pillar is emphasize the punk in cyberpunk. It's not just an aesthetic. It is about anti-establishment, anti-authoritarian. It is about non-conformity and individual freedom. Our unique selling point or distinct purpose is that user-generated content is being included in a branching narrative game with different ending possibilities. That means that the community has a engaged process to create content for people to share and experience in this setting. It's showing that choices of news reporting affects the story and has an effect, even in a fictional world. And it allows players to build the world with user-generated stories and then affect change in their play sessions through what choices they make. Our keywords, our theme keyword is cyberpunk, our genre keyword is narrative, and our action keyword is word puzzle. So as you can see, our elevator pitch is 2 to 3 sentences talking about the setting, the fact that the player is a news editor for a news broadcast, and what they do is they select stories and create headlines. So this is the setting, the action, and sort of a curiosity sort of tinge here. So you don't just report the news, you make it. Sort of almost the startings of a tagline. In the game brief, we then explore each of those options. So we've used our keywords that we identified to say what type of game this is. Really dig into what the player actions are and also the consequences, what happens after those actions in that game loop. What the game is going to exclusively look like. The use of UI screens. This is an important sort of visual aspect, that it is using UI screens to really suck the player into that all I'm dealing with is data and information, and real world consequences are at the end of dealing with UI buttons. We look at some of the key features, the key gameplay. So these are the concepts, the themes that a lot of the stories are going to play with around these elements. These are also going to be our feature balances to ensure that, some stories will be preferencing authority or preferencing freedom. and how does that change the world around them and the balance of them. We've highlighted that we're going to actually have an ending for each of these sides, and then one for a middle neutral ground. And also we've made a point to talk about the user-generated content here, that we want to open this up to people being able to submit their own stories and that sort of thing, to not just add content, but be involved in the world building of the world that Bullet N exists in. So this starting page really commits us to a lot of the things that our studio vision and our studio mission for our games covers. We're telling a story. We are telling the story of what it is to be the person who determines what the world thinks of itself. News media has the real power to affect not just individual thinking, but the thinking of an entire group of society. How, not just what stories are being reported, but what frames and how they're being reported can end with real world consequences. That is true in our current world, as much as is the focus for our fictional world in Bullet N. And that's what we're looking to explore here. So that's the story we're looking to go into, is the story of news stories. We're also focused on that community pillar of our vision. I thought it would be really interesting for players or anyone who's interested in narrative design to be able to submit their own stories, that we could have this offering for, you know, anybody watching out there, anyone who wants to be involved to get their first credit as a writer or a narrative designer, really putting the tools into people's hands to add these. How that looks is a very good question. That's why further down we've put the questions around modding and sort of like how that looks like. And that's going to be sort of developer tools similar to what we use to set up the stories. So that will be a key question to address during development. So this is a game that is about a story about news stories that involves the community in writing those stories and adding to the world and what it is for that narrative space within our game. The core pillars here, this is the things that I'm going to constantly be returning to in creative process. So this one here is the main one for me, that simple player choices lead to big in-world consequences. The actions players are taking are selection based of, you read a story and you select it, then you create a headline for it. So you decide what stories will and won't be part of the broadcast, then how those stories are going to be framed with the headline that is selected for them. But we want to make sure that when the binary balances are kind of triggered, that we do have big in-world consequences, whether that's practical to the player themselves or reflected in the news stories or a mixture of both, so that the free agency for the player is there to select these stories, but that there is a real weight to their choices, that it is going to change the world beyond just, companion will remember this type sort of storytelling. That every choice will change the balance of things and drive the world along these sort of binary balances. This one here, the visuals are all screen and UI interaction centered. This is one where I came to that conclusion, not just thematically, but practically. My art skills are not as advanced. So that was one of the things that I identified that perhaps our first game, being a solo dev, we need to focus on something that is not, that still has visual aesthetic, but without having specific art style. Art creation needs. There still will be a style guide. There still will be that sort of like what this game looks like, and choices of palette and UI design. But the actual creation of assets is limited to a 2D UI based elements. I have put in, up here that we may be looking at vignettes or backgrounds for the workspace. And that's an exploration for seeing how far my art skills advance during this process, and seeing if they actually add or detract from the game experience. Our focus is on getting the game experience before we start looking at the artistic elevation beyond these UI screens. But it's important to me that the majority of the game is that UI screen, UI based, to enhance that theme of separation of world and story for the player. That one was directly to our community vision, part of our vision statement. And this one, I wanted to kind of has a reminder that I shouldn't just make all of the artwork look cool and look cyberpunk, but that through the stories and that are part of the news stories, that the consequences of choices and potentially the outcomes are along these sort of main themes, that it's not to incentivize this gameplay. The unique selling point, this was just basically distillation of the things that set us apart. So that user-generated content, so we're including outside people and players and the community to build this shared world of Bullet M. I say world, I'm still toying with the idea of whether it's a specific city or an actual world, and then different stories in different places. But I'm going to be exploring that further in pre-production, in that design sort of like aspect, and what strengths, pros and cons there are to both of those approaches. But essentially, allowing some agency for players to define elements of the world, not just, create a PC and, a player character, but also to influence non-player characters sort of like that appear in the storyline, to maybe create some of these corporations or groups that operate within the game. Really, I think will open that up, and also wanting to expose people to what it looks like to not just write, but write for games and to write collaboratively. Very, very, very much inspired here by Blaseball. That's why I've got my Blaseball jersey on here. Blaseball had a lot of that community building writing, and it was up to the community to decide what was canon or not. It was a really interesting game, and very much inspired by that. But while that was a sports game with cosmic horror theming, we're doing more of a news reporting aspect, and the player has a lot more agency than what Blaseball kind of offered, as a lot of that was randomized, and you could figure out some of the randomization, so you could weight things in your favor, but nothing was truly determinative. But the thing here is that, user-generated stories make a world feel alive. And that's what we want to do, is to create a world that is alive, but it's up to the player and their choices as to what aspects of that world grow, and what aspects of that world maybe minimize through their selection of those news stories and what headlines they put on them. I also added these down here just to keep as a touchstone what it is that we're doing. So theme is like the setting It can also be general concepts that you come to and touchstones. So our theme is cyberpunk, that a dystopian future of, corporate control and individualism, and what does over commercialization look like, and how do humans exist when society has become the systems that built it, rather than the people operating the systems. Genre keyword helps us to ground ourselves in what genre of game we're making, what we're going to be looking at potentially as some comparison market research, where it is that our roots and our main game is there. You can have multiple genre keywords, you can have multiple theme keywords, but this just helps frame the game in a type of game. So we are a narrative game. An action keyword is specifically around what it is the player does. So an action keyword could be first-person shooter. You are set in a first person and you are shooting things, right? That is very evocative about the moment-to-moment gameplay and player actions. Now, it's interesting it was interesting to define the action keyword for Bulletin. But it came to me that this isn't just a typical narrative game of dialogue choices and consequences. This is has that aspect through what stories you're creating, but the Mad Lib style creation of headlines is a word puzzle. What is it that you frame a story as is as important as what stories are told. So this is where I was like, well, this just seems essentially like an extension of a number of sort of word puzzles that are there, like, finding out Wordle's a great example, trying to figure out the letters and that sort of thing. That's a great word puzzle. Crosswords, where you're using words to cross-reference each other to find a solution to a question, whether that's cryptic or not. So this is where word puzzle, I think, is an interesting one for us, that we can set ourselves apart because we are a narrative game, but we're a word puzzle game as well. So we're kind of touching on three different areas, and that unique selling point is that we're a cyberpunk narrative word puzzle game is, well, there aren't that many of that type of combination out there. Maybe we'll stand apart within those segments, but also we offer something new to the game genre as well, and the game theme and action sort of keywords as well. So that's what we're looking at for our game idea section. Let's go back to the main document and we'll look at the game business strategy section. Now you've got the game idea framework there, it's time to look at the game business strategy. This is specifically tailored to the game itself. We have created the studio business plan, but this is specifically about how this game fits into that business plan and informs that business plan, and how it is driven by the studio business plan as well. So these are specific things for the game itself. They should be complementary to the business plan, but the studio business plan, but they shouldn't necessarily just be a mirror of it. Each game has its own space that it operates in, its own life that it leads. And so it's important that, each of them has their own defined business strategy as well, how that game is positioned in the market, how that game is talked about, how that game is funded, who is going to play each of your games. So this is an extension of the business plan, but should be specifically tailored towards your game itself. But here we'll definitely dive down into what the game business strategy looks like and why it's important to have each of these areas listed. It also as why it's important to have it there for any funding or publishing conversations. So, what are the game goals? What outcomes do you want for the game? This isn't just quantifiable. You could have it as we want to sell 10,000 copies. We want to be number one in a category on the format. We want to have review score of a minimum amount. We want to have a certain number of concurrent players. These are things that are quantifiable, but also it can be qualitative as well. We want to generate conversation around our title. We want to be involved in conversations around certain topics or themes. We want to inspire someone to make a game. These are things that are also important goals to have. If you recall in our second episode where we were looking at sort of what goals can be, that they can be binary, pass and success, but they can also be a sliding scale of how well you achieved something. So have a mix of those here as well, but make sure that they are specifically tailored to this game and what you want this game to achieve. Your target audience. So who's the game for? So this is a very, very, very important part of the process. There are multiple ways of doing it. However, I find it useful to use the concept of personas. This is where you create the idea of certain players. So, for example, we could create a persona of a player who really loves cyberpunk games and the aesthetic, but maybe isn't that big of is more action orientated. So we break that persona down into what it is that they're looking for in a game and what things that may make it difficult for them to engage with the game. And then we can kind of explore about what aspects of Bullet N are appealing and what aspects we may need to explore or address to ensure that the game is sticky with them. Sticky being that they don't just go, that's cool, but that's cool and I'm going to play it, or I am playing it. So this is important because all of the funding options that I have experience with across Canada, the UK, and Australia, every publisher conversation that I have had, every conversation I've had with anyone in games development or biz dev, business development in the game space, this is one of the first 2 or 3 questions. It'll be, tell me about your game, tell me about your target audience. So this is an important area to put some time and energy into, not just saying these are the types of players that will play it, but this is why our game specifically will be great for those types of players. This could be all theoretical. It can be competitor research, which is listed separately down here. But it can also be direct market research where you engage with market research to do some user groups to find out what it is, the types of players you want, or the types of players that you are targeting are looking for, and how your game addresses them. But this is incredibly important to have. What's your funding strategy? That's an addition to or add extra info or context to that business financial plan we made. But are there any game-specific funding considerations? Some games may be eligible for specific types of funding, or there may be specific publishers who deal with a specific genre of games. So there's these sort of areas that are beyond just the general business plan, but specifically for this game, are there opportunities out there that you want to look at as well, or adding in that extra info of this game will go for this funding and this is what we're applying for. What's your economic model? So how will you sell the game? How will you support game dev? So how will you sell the game? What platforms are you on? What storefronts are you going to sell in? Understanding the submission costs for some storefronts to get your game even listed. Then understanding the store take percentage and how that impacts is going to really inform your potential revenue once your game is on sale. And that's going to inform the recommended retail price, the RRP. This is what you are going to set that the player is going to pay. And then after that point, all of your deductions come in. So for example, Steam takes 30%. So if your game was set at $10, you 30%, so $3 of that goes to Steam, and then $7 comes your way. Now you've got that $7, you might have a publisher agreement who takes 10%. Now that 10% is more likely going to be off that recommended retail price, not off your 10% of what you take. So they'll take $1 off that $10 game to get their stuff. So you're now with $6. So that game that was $10, you're only seeing maybe 5 or 6 of that after partners, the store takes money. And that's important to understand from the get-go, because you don't want to go, oh, this game is $5. We want to get $5 from this game. And then you set your price as $5 and then you only get $2 back, because that is going to impact, your budget for the game, but also your potential budgets for future games as well. So this is an important thing to take into consideration, the retail price, what price you're selling things at, to take into factor all of the elements that are going to deduct from your revenue before it even hits your side of the account. This is a section that will often be in flux. You could start it and then you'll actually come to realize, oh, actually, we invested a lot more money into this game and now it's a more premium game. Maybe we need to raise the prices or to find other ways to monetize this game. Alternately, you might go, actually, we've brought back the scope. This is a smaller game. We can actually reduce the price a bit. So this is an area that is constantly in flux as the game develops. And it's really only around the time where you start putting it in front of players and getting an understanding of what sort of player sentiment there is around how much they're willing to pay, and also what other games and the general economy is at that time when you're looking to release is going to inform what that final recommended retail price is going to be. But other ways that you can also look to support the game development is, are you going to support microtransactions? Are you going to support downloadable content or DLC? Are you going to explore crowdfunding as well? What are the ways that you're going to support the game development for this game, either to pay back costs you've spent, or to build capital for your next game, or to build capital to reward your workers and the people who contributed to the game. Maybe this is a project that is a one and done and all the money is split with all of those people contributing, so you can go your own ways afterwards with that. There are multiple ways of looking at this, but knowing how you're going to support the game dev, how you're going to sell the game, and the economic model in your game is important, because that is going to basically pay back into these two. Your target audience are the people who are going to pay the money, and your funding strategy is your money up front. And so this is, how do we get money from our target audience, the players, to bring it back into our funding strategy and repay any of the money that we have to repay, either to ourselves, to publishers, to any other partners as well. Now, competitor research is an important aspect as well. This is understanding what games are already out there, which are inspirations or potential competition for the game. What do they do well? What do they not do well? And what lessons or questions from these will you take for your game? So it's important to identify what makes your game special, but also identify that the context in which the game exists. So for Bullet N, what other cyberpunk games are there? What other narrative games are there? What other word puzzle games are there? What other cyberpunk narrative games are out there? And all the combinations of those keywords are really going to help inform this. It's also going to be good to have a look at our personas and our target audience. What types of games do they play? Maybe we have a persona from a game that is very similar to the game we're making that we want to attract that exact same player. A good example would be someone who plays Animal Crossing is probably going to be interested in Story of Seasons, right? And vice versa. So that is a competitor that obviously that I would presume both of them have, both those studios have explored and played and learned from, and made creative choices of this is how we're going to do similar things, but in our own specific way to attract those players from the other games as well. So this is really good to help inform, do that early research to inform where is your market fit, what creative questions or lessons can you learn from other games to help you find what it is that you're going to do for yours. And then the game marketing plan. So this is in addition to, or it adds extra info and context to that studio marketing plan. Last episode, we were talking about marketing plans can be for games and for the studio. This one specifically should be for your game. How we market Starcore and talk about Starcore is probably going to be quite different to how we talk about Bullet N, our game. And we're going to have a look at just what that game marketing plan looks like. So where do your target audience engage with content? Is it websites, online platforms, social media? Are there specific forums that are specifically for you? Are there spaces that your target audience congregate in online or in real life that you may want to target for your marketing? What are your target audience unique requirements, needs, or wants? So different audiences and players will want different things from game marketing. So while the first one is like, where are you having these conversations and engaging with your audience? The second question, what are your target audience unique requirements, needs, or wants, really helps frame the what you're talking to them about. And then what is your content strategy? What types of things will you share? When will you share them? What sort of engagement are you looking for? So do you put out a teaser trailer and then that invites a speculation, and then you put out a gameplay trailer which then shows the gameplay, then a narrative trailer? Do you wait until a week before the game launches and say, we're making a game, here it is, and check it out, so that the hype is there immediately for when the game goes live? These are very important about what you share and when you share them is an important part of this consideration as well. What sort of engagement are you looking for is the outcome? Are you looking for more people to be engaging, so likes, shares, comments on your posts? Do you want conversations to be initiated in other spaces? A great example is Reddit. Do you want people to be starting conversations about your game, starting those speculation threads and having that conversation and generating the momentum and the conversations there? Or do you want to kind of keep it all closed door and just through what you're doing at specific times? These are important things to consider with your game marketing plan. The next section to look at is to identify what the team needs are. To deliver the game, you need to assemble a team with diverse skills, including engineers, artists, designers, potentially writers, sound designers, marketers. Using the core pillars and game brief as a starting point, you should define what skills are needed to deliver the game. So these don't necessarily have to correspond to one person. So if I say we've got gameplay, gameplay programmers is a need, that means we need a gameplay programmer. This is just at this point identifying the skills. By identifying the skills required, you'll start to see certain patterns emerging, or you can emphasize on these skill areas to know this is very important. Maybe we need a dedicated person to this, or more than one person dedicated to this. So this exercise is there kind of looking at, what sort of areas of programmers you need, what design elements you want, artists. So what skills do you need to make the game that you've got? This again is also a dynamic stage. So at this early stage, I strongly recommend it as a case of just identify what needs to be done. This will help you either inform what aspects you, your founders, or your starting team members need to cover, or also look at, well, we haven't got this skill area covered. We need to go and find someone to help us with that. So that will help prioritize or schedule where in the production where you may want to be looking at expanding and bringing these sort of skill sets into your team. So for programmers, this is a non-exhaustive list, by the way. This is just common skill areas. But for programmers, gameplay programmers, engine build programmers, and user interface UI programmers are common ones. So in designers, different types of designers you could have: gameplay or features, user interface UI or user experience UX. It's important to kind of note that, yes, I have listed these separately. There is a much bigger and more nuanced conversation around the difference between user interface and user experience. So the way that I like to simply explain the difference is that user interface is what the player does, so the buttons or the interaction, and user experience is the journey in which the user takes and how they feel about that. That is very, very, very simplified, but it kind of illustrates the difference between action and experience. User interface is action driven, user experience is experience driven. That is a very big topic, but it's important to understand that often these are done by the same person. Often these are done at the same time, but they should be addressed and given their own space and time, as some things that are good for user interface are not always the best for user experience, and vice versa. So think of these as complementary aspects of the same area that need to find a middle ground between them. Other designers, narrative designers, level designers. In terms of artists, 2D, 3D asset, 2D, 3D environment. Again, these are two different things. Assets are creating the objects, and environment is a lot of the time sort of placement and sort of creation of the spaces. Again, very similar, but certain people can have strengths in either of those or both. UI artists, concept artists, animators, VFX, so visual effects, artists. In terms of producers, you can have a feature producer who is set to deliver the games, and then delivery manager who is about releasing games. There's other types of producer as well, but these are kind of the two sort of common key areas. Audio team members, QA or quality assurance, so gameplay, destructive, smoke, and automated are different types of QA that can be done in testing. And then in marketing, social media content manager, media relations, community managers, all of those there. What sort of skills do you need? So have a think about what skills your game requires. These may be at different times as well. You may want a concept artist at the start, but at the end of a project, a concept artist isn't as beneficial, but a community manager might be. So think about not just what skills you need, but when you think you might need them. Start, middle, or end is a good framework. That process of at the start, middle, or end is starting to go into what the development process looks like. What are the stages of development? What is the pipeline you go from? We've got an idea, we've got a game brief and a game idea on a piece of paper, and how do we get that to a shipped game? So these are the key areas that I've identified of the development process. This again is a lot more detailed past this point. This is at the high level of when you're looking at doing these things.
But what I've done is I've put what the outcomes for each section should be. So before you move on to the next part, ensure that you've achieved these. But this here is a good example of just the things you need to be aware of and the things to ensure that you have done before moving along your development pipeline. So prototyping. This is where you create a prototype to test your game mechanics and your core gameplay. This is often the earliest stages of production and should be focused on ensuring that your game brief and core pillars show promise and value. The outcomes are that you have a clear understanding of what the game is, and that you have a clear understanding of what technology, challenges, and opportunities the game has. This is essentially anyone who experiences this should go, oh, I see what the game is and why it's fun. That's the big question you're answering. Why is this game fun? What makes this special? So once you've got the prototype and you've demonstrated that your game is fun, that you understand what the game mechanics are and the core gameplay, that there is and a clear understanding of what technology challenges and opportunities there are and why the game is fun, we can start looking at going into a full game development pipeline. This is to establish a clear game development pipeline to manage the flow of work and ensure efficient production. That's why we're doing it. And then common phases in a game development pipeline are pre-production. This is where most of the planning and design work happens. So at the end of this, we should have a proven game brief, an agreed timeline and production plan, a game design document, a technical game design document, and an art reference document. Basically, at the end of pre-production, you should have all of the elements to make your game. This is the recipe. You know what you're doing, how you're doing it. Now all that needs to happen is actually doing it. Oftentimes, prototyping is included in pre-production. So there would be an outcome in there, a proven prototype. I like to keep them separate because on a bigger project, you can have people making prototypes before you even kick off the agreed timeline and production plan. You can have a dedicated engineer, dedicated designer, team of one of each to just make prototypes, to find new ways and new games and why they're fun before you even start completing out the pre-production standpoint. But certainly, by the end of pre-production, you should have a prototype and you should have these as well. Once you finish pre-production, you can head into production. And this is where you make the game. There should be incremental development focusing on high priority areas first. So at the end of production, this is where you have a tested and proven game build that is stable. So that's basically where you'll hear a lot of the milestones like alpha, beta, pre-release, a vertical slice, minimum viable product, demo. A lot of words are used here for different milestones, but the key thing here is to ensure that whatever milestones you're doing, that they're incremental development and that you prioritize things. So while it might be fun for us to write the stories for Bullet N, we need to have the system to display a random selection of those and then have the player choose them and create headlines before we even have the actual writing. So we need to ensure that our early incremental development stages have those features of the systems before we can add the content to those systems. So that's where you'll often have, content being made while at the same time the feature that's going to use it is being developed, but the content is only implemented once the features are done. Also consider your post-release plan. So once the game is released, what are you going to do to support it? There's many ways of doing this. It depends on what works for your studio and for your game. So you could have DLC, which are regular updates with new content, free range release, which is release and see what happens organically. So players want something and then you go, oh yeah, we'll do that. You can address community concerns and bugs when you see fit. And then games as a service or GaaS. This is a derivative of software as a service. which is regular updates with community requests and quality of life. So this is the forever game, the game that is online and you get regular updates and that sort of thing. So you are constantly supporting things on a regular basis. You can do a combination of all of these, but have a think about what works for you as a studio, but also what works for your game as well in your post-release plan. Outside of this game development pipeline sort of thing, it's important to also consider your community engagement. So how and where are you going to build your community around your game and engage with your players? Be sure to do so early and often is my recommendation. That may be in contradiction to, your game marketing plan, and that's okay as well. Make a plan for when and how you will engage with your community and audience. Be sure to have achievable outcomes for this. Are you asking for feedback? Are you getting general discussion? Is it just hype generation? What is it that you're looking to achieve through this as well? Once you've done that, you should have all the elements of this high-level game development plan. You'll have your game idea, which includes an elevator pitch, the game brief, the core pillars, and defined unique selling point. You'll have your business strategy where you outline the game goals, who your target audience is, what your funding strategy and economic model is, what competitors are out there, and also outlined your game marketing plan. You've identified what skills your team requires to be able to deliver the game. And you've also started to think about what milestones you want to do to achieve the game and to develop it. But this concludes the prologue to this series. The first 3 episodes now are completed. We have the studio foundations for Starcore. We have our studio business plan framework that we'll be detailing out. We have our game development plan high-level document that we'll be exploring and adding greater detail through our development process. So now's as good a time as any for you to start your own game studio, which is why I'll be releasing this document in a under a Creative Commons in an easily accessible place. Look for the link in the description. You can download this document, use it to help with your game development journey, whether that's creating a studio, creating a solo studio, or even just looking at the studio you've already got and ensuring that you've done all of these things for yourself, for your business, or for your game. I really, really hope to see you along in our future episodes. I really hope you'll continue on the journey with me as I build Starcore and I create Bulletin, our first game. And I hope that, this has been helpful for you on your own journeys to either answer some questions or even frame some questions you may not already have known. I really encourage you to subscribe. We'll be doing this throughout the entire process. I'll be doing regular updates to YouTube. So subscribe, join in the journey, get in the comments, ask questions. I'll have links to the Discord as well, where if you want to have more of a dedicated discussion or with myself or anybody else in the community around game development, I really want to create a space where we can have this open conversation around what it is to make games and how we can become better practitioners and craftspeople at this art that we have dedicated ourselves to do. So thanks again for joining me. Thanks for being a part of this already. And I hope to see you next episode.